There is a feeling you get when a great explanation lands. Something clicks. The pieces arrange themselves, and suddenly the world seems a little more orderly than it did a moment before. William James had a name for this sensation. He called it the sentiment of rationality, and he believed it was one of the most important and most misunderstood forces in human thought. In his 1879 essay of the same name, James argued that what we call rational thinking is not purely a logical operation. It is accompanied, and sometimes driven, by a distinctive emotional tone. When we feel that we understand something, we are not only registering a logical relationship. We are experiencing a feeling of fluency, of ease, of cognitive rest. The mind stops searching. The restlessness that comes with an open question quiets down. James called this the feeling of rationality itself. This might sound like a small observation, but James drew radical conclusions from it. He noticed that people are often drawn to explanations not because those explanations are the most accurate, but because they produce this feeling most powerfully. A grand unified theory, one principle that explains everything, generates an intense sentiment of rationality even when it leaves out important details. The mind rewards parsimony. It loves the single cause, the one underlying truth, the elegant reduction. James described two competing demands within rational thought. The first is the demand for unity, the urge to reduce complexity, to find the one thread that ties everything together. The second is the demand for completeness, the urge to leave nothing out, to account for every fact, every exception, every nuance. These two demands are almost always in tension. A theory that satisfies the demand for unity often sacrifices completeness, and vice versa. The sentiment of rationality, James observed, tends to favor unity. We feel more satisfied by the clean explanation than by the complicated one, even when the complicated one is more accurate. Consider how this plays out in everyday reasoning. A person searches for one reason why their relationship failed, one reason why their career stalled, one cause for a health problem. The mind reaches for unity. The single explanation feels more rational, more settled, more useful. But reality rarely cooperates with this demand. Most outcomes have multiple contributing causes, and the explanations that honor that complexity often feel less satisfying even when they are better. James applied this insight to philosophy and religion as well. He noticed that certain philosophical systems, particularly idealist systems that reduced all reality to a single mental substance, were enormously popular not because they were more logically compelling than alternatives, but because they produced a powerful sentiment of rationality. They felt complete. They felt like the final word. And that feeling was mistaken for proof. This is where James's warning becomes especially important. The sentiment of rationality can be counterfeited. A worldview that is actually superficial, that actually omits important truths, can still generate the full emotional reward of understanding if it is framed with sufficient confidence and simplicity. Dogmas and ideologies often exploit this. They offer a key that seems to open every door, a principle that explains every event. The feeling they produce is not wisdom. It is the imitation of wisdom. James was not arguing that simplicity is always wrong. He admired elegant theories and saw genuine intellectual beauty in a well-unified explanation. His point was more subtle. The sentiment of rationality is evidence, but not conclusive evidence. The feeling of understanding is a useful signal, but it must be cross-checked against reality. It can lead you toward truth, and it can lead you away from it. A good thinker learns to feel that satisfaction without becoming enslaved by it. In modern cognitive science, we recognize versions of this dynamic in what researchers call fluency effects. Ideas that are easy to process feel more true, more credible, more familiar. Fonts that are easy to read make claims seem more believable. Rhyming statements are judged as more accurate than non-rhyming ones with identical content. The cognitive ease that James described as the sentiment of rationality turns out to be a pervasive feature of how human minds evaluate information. James also connected this sentiment to the experience of wonder and discovery. The moment when a scientist finds the equation that unifies two phenomena, when a therapist identifies the one childhood pattern running through a patient's adult life, when a detective finds the single motive behind an apparently inexplicable crime, these moments produce an intense surge of the sentiment of rationality. They are among the most satisfying experiences the mind can have. James wanted us to enjoy them fully while remaining humble about what they actually prove. The lesson for daily life is practical. When you feel that satisfying click of understanding, pause. Ask whether the explanation that produced this feeling might be too clean. Ask whether it is leaving something out. Ask whether a less elegant but more comprehensive account might be closer to the truth. The sentiment of rationality is a gift, but like most gifts, it requires wisdom to use well. William James gave us a way to think about thinking itself, not just the conclusions we reach, but the emotional textures of the process. Recognizing the sentiment of rationality is a first step toward becoming not just a smarter thinker, but a more honest one. Subscribe to The Psychology of William James to explore more of his timeless ideas.